Cyclones. So we'll see the introduction part of the cyclones. So we know the cyclones in the day-to-day life and about its effects, vigorous effects, and also how much it affects the livelihood and other typical disasters. So a low pressure area with the winds spiraling inward is called as a cyclone. And similarly, the storm around the high pressure area is called anticyclones. So that is just the reverse of the cyclone is the anticyclones. And the cyclones may result in stormy wind and heavy rainfall, which affects livelihood, as I said earlier. So, and also the cyclones are usually accompanied by a violent storm and also a very heavy bad weather. So before the cloud formation, so water takes up heat from the atmosphere to change into vapor. And when water vapor changes back to liquid form as raindrops, this heat, so which is generated, right? So is released to the atmosphere. And the heat released to the atmosphere warms the air around. So this air tends to rise and cause a drop in pressure. And more air rushes to the center of the storm. So when it happens, and when this particular cycle repeated often, so the chain of events end with the formation of a very low pressure system with very high speed winds, so revolving around that same area. So this is the weather condition that we call as a cyclone. And the factors will like wind speed, wind direction, temperature, humidity, and which all these things contributed to develop the cyclone. And also, as air mass moves around the globe, so the air pressure changes. So this is the concept. So the area of high pressure is called anticyclone, and the low pressure area is called as the cyclone, or you can simply call it as a depression. These two patterns brings a different kind of a weather series. So the law governing here is known as Bies-Bellot's law. So here, a cyclone is a system of a wind rotating counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere around a low pressure center and the clockwise in the southern hemisphere. So here, the law we can say or state that in the northern hemisphere, wind moves in the anti-clockwise direction around the center of the low pressure and the clockwise around the center of the high pressure in the southern hemisphere. So this is the law governing here, which is known as the Bies-Bellot's law. So when we need to differentiate the cyclone and the anticyclone, we can say that the cyclone generates under the low pressure and the anticyclone generates under the high pressure. And here under the cyclone, so the speed of the wind is very strong, and under anticyclone, the speed of the wind is quite light. Here in the figure you can see in cyclone, the counterclockwise or the anti-clockwise direction around the center of the low pressure. So here exactly to say that the air is blown to the center. Whereas if you see this anticyclone, that is the clockwise around the center of the high pressure, which is in the southern hemisphere. So it is clear that the blow of air is away from the center. And under the cyclone, we can see that the air masses meet and rise, whereas in the anticyclone, the air moves apart and sinks gradually. And also in the cyclone, you can see that the air near the ground is pushed towards the low pressure center of the cyclone, and then it rises upward, expanding and cooling as it moves. And in the anticyclone, we can see the air at the center of the anticyclone is forced away from its area of high pressure and replaced by a downward blast of air, which is from the higher altitudes. And the process of cyclone formation and intensification is called as the cyclogenesis. And the cyclones are not only present on Earth but also spotted on other planets like Mars, Jupiter, and Neptune. The name of the cyclones are varied, depends upon the regions. So in Indian Ocean, we call it as a tropical cyclones, and in the Caribbean Sea region, it is called as hurricanes, and Chinese Sea, we call it as the typhoons. So it is named as a typhoon because it is a mature tropical cyclone which develops between the 180 degree and 100 degree east in the northern hemisphere. In Japan, it is called as Taifu, and in the northern Australia, it is called as the Willy Willies, and in the Philippines, it is called as Baguio, and in USA, it is called as tornadoes.